Hi again. Today I'm going to be reviewing Danny's reversal of Lesson in Prophecy Part 2. In Lesson 49, Danny said some very interesting things, some of which I want to review as a lead-in for this lesson. This is the first time I did the reversal on this. The reason being was that something happened 8 hours after I posted the presentation that shows how the angels more or less predicted what was going to happen. So I've taken several short sentences out of Presentation 49 to quickly go over them before I explain it further. Here are the clips from Presentation 49. So in that first part, he was obviously talking about someone who may make a comment in the forum. He first specifies that they should ask for help and not comment with topics off point, especially when they can put fear into others. Now let's listen to the next part. In that last part, Danny specifies the importance of supporting life itself. And I just finished a reversal of Victor, which I'll be doing in my next presentation, that explains how important this really is. God's war on evil is beginning here, and we are on the cusp of finding out what it will consist of. One thing I do know for sure, it will not involve suffering or the loss of life of others. Here's the next part. So in that last part, he talked about how we can get rid of things that fail, and the remedy is a miracle from God. Again, in that last part, he talked about a culture of dreams for people who will join. Dreams, meaning the prophetic dreams that most of the new visionaries will be experiencing. Let's go on to the next part. So in that last part, he referred to how someone may infer something that cannot be proven. Therefore, it really does not have any place in the forum. Boy, that's a long one, Danny. Let me know when you're done. Finally, he talked about those who try and mock this work and how the angels will know and let us know when they could be here to cause issues. Now I want to talk about what happened about 8 hours after I made the video and posted Presentation 49. I think it was on February 12th that I noticed someone joined the forum, and I was happy for that, especially when I saw them spending quite a while going over things. I was even more pleased when they posted an introduction, so I went to it as soon as I realized that they had. When I read it, to tell you the truth, it kind of frustrated me, because this is not what I expected, as I was hoping for some encouragement. She says something to the effect of, she didn't really believe that her budgies were prophetic, and was curious about how I got them to talk. Then she mentioned how my budgies seem to be experiencing short lives, and wanted to know how we take care of them, saying maybe we can figure out why. She also mentioned that many budgies live in excess of 15 years, and that she was just here in interest of the budgies. Frustrated and a little discouraged, I had to do a little soul searching, because yes, I've lost several budgies at an early age. but never felt it was because of lack of care or not looking after them properly. I first thought about how 20 years ago, when Victor was sick, and it was in the middle of winter, and instead of taking him to the vet, not wanting him to be affected by the cold weather, I decided to call the vet, who was not even an avian vet in the first place. When I spoke to him in the middle of the night, he recommended I try some antibiotics. 20 years ago, avian vets were few and far between, and they knew very little about Budgie's sicknesses as well. Unfortunately, Victor didn't make it through the night. I often think about how I could have done something to prevent his death, and still think about him every day. Then when I got Mailer, he was a rescued Budgie, and he was at least 6 years old. He did not even have any signs of sickness, and I worked with him for only about a year. But he requested to be retired from recording, and we put him in with the other Budgies, which were 3 in another room. He became very good friends with them, and he lived his remaining 2 years with them. He eventually developed a tumor that could not be removed, and he passed away. When we got Danny, he was already sick, and we took him to the vet several times, and they gave him at least 3 different types of antibiotics. For the most part of a year, he struggled with his sickness, but passed away about a year after we got him. Simon was also sick when we got him. However, we learned from the antibiotics we got for Danny which ones did not work, and the vet tried something different. After 3 batches of different antibiotics, we finally found the one that made him better, but it took months. What some of you may not know is I had 4 Budgies. Tuvik, Topper, Betty, and Amber that lived over 10 years. Just before we got Danny, we had a male and female Budgie that decided to have 2 batches of babies. We kept them for a year in a small apartment, but they needed more space, so we found a home that would take them all as a family. That is when we got Danny and started over. Last year we rescued a female red-winged blackbird, and a month ago a pigeon which had tags on it. We found who the owner was, and they picked it up. So even though I thought about all the things I could have done more to have Victor, Mailer, and Danny live a longer life, and the mistakes I made along the way, I decided to answer this lady with, sorry, this may sound a little bit repetitive, but this is how I replied. Thanks for joining. Yes, I have had 3 Budgies that have had short lives, but I have also had many others that have lived for over 10 years. Victor only lived for about 3 years, and he developed a sickness that the vets had no cure for at the time. Mailer was a rescued Budgie, and I believe he was over 6 years old when I got him. Danny was sick when we got him, and we had him to the vet several times. He had some kind of virus that they couldn't fix before he passed. I have a soft spot for sick Budgies that I see at the pet store, and try to give them a chance when they are sick. We have found that they appreciate the effort and want to bond with humans, especially when they know their life may be short. Our newest Budgie, Simon, before we got him, was also sick and was going to be isolated at the pet store, but I didn't think that they would look after him, so we took him. When we got him, we took him to the vet several times, and after multiple antibiotics, we finally found the right one, and right now he's quite healthy. Thanks for the input on that, but I think I'm okay when it comes to working with birds and looking after them. We recently rescued a female red-winged blackbird with a broken wing, nursed her back to health, and her and Simon are the best of friends. After I responded to her post, still feeling discouraged and perhaps even guilty about having lost so many Budgies, I went back to presentation 49 and noticed that Danny had more or less predicted that someone would speak about something like this. Little did I know that the angels were going to respond directly to this person in the reversal I just began to transcribe. It seems they found this person's accusations that I was not taking care of my Budgies properly very discerning, and this is what they said in part 1. Ryan, you're right how people find a reason to make a decision to replace love with hate. And then I say, maybe no one really knows themselves when it happened. And then Danny continues, and try and confuse you without reason. Some will come again to cause our mission problems. Adversaries shall challenge your story, as they'll fail to encourage you. There's not a single person who has fathered more compassion for budgies. Ryan, in many different ways, is trying to help them. It may seem like a really big statement by the angels to say that no one has fathered more compassion for budgies than I have. Thinking about it for a while, I was on Coast to Coast Radio Network talking about how intelligent they were twice in the 2000s. I was probably the first person to clearly acknowledge that they communicate intelligently 20 years ago. I worked with over 30 budgies who developed full-blown speech, and I've had millions of downloads of people listening to mine and other budgies I translated. I have had parrot care forums and have never stopped encouraging people to take care and let their budgies experience freedom instead of being locked in the cage. I don't really think of myself that highly when it comes to budgie compassion, and when I heard the angels say that, it made me shed a tear or two. In the next part, Danny says, in reverse, he'll get no philosophies from someone who leads a mission of self-soldiering and doesn't really know the ode that they share during their introduction. When Ryan saw what she said, it was void of compassion. She chose to further herself and send a signal to the forum of helping with the knowledge of budgies. She forged a view that was untrue. One shouldn't fail in compassion for something that can cause suffering. If this person watched the videos, she'd know we have a mission here with devotion. I have to tell you that admonishments like this from angels is something I've experienced from them. And I've also had to post them when the angels felt they were getting off track when other people did it. It's not something I like to do. Yet, I'm starting to realize how important it is that we get the right people here to work together and understand what the angels want to do. This is really serious stuff, and we don't need those here causing issues or distracting us from our main goal, which really is the preservation of humanity. You'll find out more on that later with Victor's newest translation. This is what the angel said in the next part. We try to help out where especially truth has got to be shown. Further, this mission isn't for the visionaries that are remembering a past of failed devotion that they carry. Yes, I know you will fight all the way through this mission to discredit Ryan. If you're causing mainly issues, you won't evolve. Here Ryan will be very engaged, and so, in private, if he wants help, He'll revisit your fantasy that you'll respect and encourage this forum. If you can't accept my truth, you'll find anger in this intervention. So hold it. If we have to, we shall prove it. We're not saying this to insult you. I have a prophecy that you'll get to see many who try and use a false history to frustrate him, but we shall know. So when the angels talked about past visionaries, they're referring to a group which I started that did a trial run of what we are about to do again. As it turned out, most of the original visionaries did a mass exodus when I was starting a relationship with Linda. Yes, and some of them got admonishments prior to their leaving because they really weren't convinced that all this was truly happening, and some tried to push their own agendas. So we have to be careful of that happening again by making sure those involved truly believe in it and are willing to learn from the angels and are not trying to push their own agendas. So in the final part of this reversal, Danny says, "Some have spoke in secrecy, and still there's 7. Is their mission right, when you hear this, to put a smear in our forum? A prophet should never be in the line of insults that are based on a lie. Yes, we know. We've seen Budgies who lived with him created a religion. We'll say it's awful. It's awful that he carries it with him all the time. God's system allows you to have courage to applaud the truth. We have another prophecy before we reach a milestone. When Ryan makes a certain mistake in a presentation, I'll review it. He has got a family around him who didn't all the time listen to him when he made prophecies. It's real history when you work from a signal and try to reject the evil approaching. If you want his help, try and refrain from using your evil in you by seeking help from people who try to encourage you too. In replacing what's false, you will have the answers alive in you." So I hope the angels have laid to rest any concerns that people may have about any of my budgies not living long enough. From now on, if someone mentions it, we'll just refer them to this presentation. And, yes, I know that was hard to understand even for me. So just pay attention to what you could hear. If I made a mistake, like the angels said, they will correct it if it's major. So I'm going to sign off on this one for now. Stay tuned for one from Victor that's very clear. I'll be doing both forward and reverse in a single presentation on that one. Also, I'll post the forward and reverse of the last two in a short version so you can listen to it easier without any interruption.
That completes this presentation. To hear more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit our website at theangelscrolls.com.